She was the calm in the middle of all the chaos on Little House on the Prairie. Fans loved the mother image. But there was a big problem behind the camera. She didn't say anything, not on the show and not for decades afterwards. She didn't tell anyone, even though it almost broke her. Now that she's 82, she's finally telling everyone what Michael Landon did to her and why she kept quiet for so long. In the 1970s and 1980s, Karen Grassle played Caroline Less on Little House on the Prairie. For millions of fans, Caroline Less was the perfect mother, quiet, steady, and always caring, kind, elegant, and incredibly patient. For a while, everyone thought that was also who Karen Grassle was. Karen now says that the truth is much more complicated, though. When she played the tough frontier mother, she wasn't just playing. She was still alive. Getting through the politics of a set controlled by men, about surviving the power plays of one guy, Michael Landon. Back then, no one would have thought of it. Karen and Michael were the show's faces. They were pictured together in promotional pictures, gave happy cast interviews, and put on performances every week that made families all over America cry. There was no denying their chemistry on screen. Not so behind the scenes, though. The power wasn't even. He was more than just the star of Little House. He made the show, wrote it, was the chief producer, and for a while he was even in charge of directing it. He was in charge of everything. Karen later wrote in her autobiography, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, that the idea of Michael as a good father figure was more of a myth than a fact. She was careful for many years. She didn't talk about the stress on the set because she didn't want to change the good impression people had of Landon. But that quiet cost Landon a lot because even though he played a loving husband on screen, he was often very mean to Karen in real life. In the first few seasons, Karen wasn't paid nearly as much as Landon and some of her male co-workers. Landon wasn't nice or helpful when she asked for a raise after the show became popular. He made it clear that she wasn't allowed to ask. According to Karen, things began to change after that. Scenes were written in a different way. Some very sensitive parts were cut. Little by little, her part was shrunk just enough to make a point and remind her who was in charge. She was made fun of behind the scenes at writing meetings on set where things were said and jokes told that were inappropriate and made her feel inferior. Karen says Michael would say rude things even while shooting private scenes. He would say these rude, pointless things with a smirk that seemed to say, "You want more? This is what more looks like." She didn't leave, though, because Karen had learned, like many women in Hollywood at the time, to put up with things, keep quiet, and pick her fights. She knew how tough it had been to get that job. People cared about the show, and she knew how rare it was for a woman over 30 to be able to handle a prime-time drama. So she smiled, showed up, and said her lines. For decades, she kept the rest of it a secret. She isn't ready to talk until she is 82 years old. Not to get back at someone or ruin their reputation, but because the truth is important. Because sharing her story means she can finally let go of the heavy weight she had been carrying for too long. What she's about to say next is even scarier. She thought she had found her dream job when Little House on the Prairie first aired in 1974. The writing felt good. The set was nice. Michael Landon, who was already well known from Bonanza, seemed like he really wanted the show to be a hit. He was charming, funny, and dedicated. Karen wasn't stupid, though. Right from the start, she knew that this was his world. He wasn't just the star. He was in charge of the ideas, the editing, and the final decision on everything, from the plots to the actors. During the first few seasons, that power difference didn't lead to open conflict, but it hung over the show like a ghost, and then it spoke up. As the show got going and became very famous, Karen's part as Ma became very important to how it made people feel. The network saw how popular she was, and her fans loved her. One thing stayed the same, though: her pay. Landon was getting huge salaries and extras for working on the show, but Karen was stuck in the deal she made with the producer. She knew she was worth a lot more than that. When she finally spoke out and asked for a raise, things went badly very quickly. Michael didn't scream. He didn't make threats. He did something less loud and mean instead. Karen says that he used the script. Suddenly, the order of the scenes changed. Caroline's words were cut down. Family meals, which used to be sweet and emotional, became short events. The most telling thing might be that Landon's character took over the emotional arc of the shows, while Karen's character faded into the background. Not a small thing, and it wasn't an accident. In the end, Karen said she thought she was being punished for speaking out, being brave, and forgetting that she was not only a co-star on that set, but also a junior. She saw the irony. In real life, she quietly dealt with being made fun of while playing a mother who kept her family together through hard times. And the writing wasn't the end of it. There was a change in Landon's humor going on behind the scenes. What seemed like harmless joking turned into jabs meant to hurt. Karen said that he would make rude jokes in front of the team, especially when she had to be close to him on set. While getting ready for a romantic moment between Charles and Caroline on a memorable day of shooting, Landon is said to have made a joke about her body that could be heard by everyone in the room. A lot of people laughed. Karen didn't. She laughed. She did it. She didn't stop. What else could have been done? To be upset. For her to quit the most important job she had ever had. Karen had trained as an actor for many years. She had done Shakespeare, plays, and dramas. She was famous all over the country for this part. And she was afraid that calling out Landon, the show's beloved patriarch, would make her look like the bad girl. That part kept coming back to her for years. It wasn't just the mean things said, it wasn't just the different pay, it was that she had to act like it didn't matter and swallow it all. She was lying to herself every time she stood next to Landon in an interview and called him great. That's why she didn't say anything. Back then, speaking out would have been the end of a career. She was going up against a man who was loved by fans, protected by producers, and to be honest, too strong to beat. She waited carefully and quietly until one day, a long time after the cameras stopped rolling, and Michael Landon was no longer there. She chose to talk, and what she said next shocked even people who thought they knew everything. Karen Grassle avoided interviews for many years. She didn't go to gatherings. She didn't read the news stories that said Little House on the Prairie had the best group and the best show. Things changed for her when she turned 80. She started to write. It wasn't meant to be a strike. The goal of her autobiography, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, was to show her whole life, her childhood, the problems she had, her rise to fame, and all the difficult things that fame brought with it. Yet, as the pages came together, Karen saw that she could no longer run away from one truth: how badly Michael Landon had treated her and how it had hurt her. She had buried it for many years. She told herself at first that it wasn't worth going over again. Over time, she began to believe that things might not have been so bad after all. Of course, as she wrote, the memories came back to her very clearly, especially the one that made her finally speak up. It was in the middle of a heated contract discussion. Karen was brave enough to ask for what she was due, which was fair pay or something close to it. She wasn't asking for as much money as Landon, just a raise that fit her job and how well known she was. What happened next was very scary. Karen says that something changed in their scenes together right after the deal didn't work out. It was not overt, but it was clear. During an emotional kiss between Charles and Caroline on screen, Landon is said to have changed the mood of the scene. They leant in for the kiss in a way that felt fake, over the top, and not at all like how they practiced it. It was a message to Karen. It was a message that you could be replaced, and it worked. She didn't tell the producers about it. She didn't tell the team what was wrong because she knew the system wouldn't protect her. It never did. In her book, she talks about that time as one of the worst in her career. She was ashamed that she had no choice, no power, no safety net, just a smile and a script. It wasn't the kiss itself that made her feel bad. The stories that came next were even scarier. Karen remembered how Landon would flirt with women on set even though he was married at the time. Sometimes he would do it in front of their kids. Because he was the boss, no one spoke out against his jokes about women's bodies, speech, and clothes. Karen didn't say anything even though she saw everything. She learned early on that speaking out meant being called difficult, which was not an image any actress in the 1970s, especially one who was getting close to 40, wanted. But being quiet has a weight to it, and Karen brought that weight with her to every audition, interview, and public appearance over the years. Writing the book made her face it, and it made her realize how much she had been through and how little credit she had ever given herself for making it through. Something strange happened after the book came out. People believed her. People who had never questioned Michael Landon's image started to see holes in the story as his fans backed her. It wasn't about getting back at Karen, to tell the truth and heal. No one's memory was her goal, but she also wasn't going to keep protecting someone who had made her feel so small for so long. She said that it was time for the truth. Many people didn't know though that Karen wasn't done yet. Because of one letter that changed everything before Michael Landon died. That's when her story takes a turn she didn't expect. Little House on the Prairie hadn't been on the air for a few years by the late 1980 Stott. The actors had left, and life went on. For Karen Grassle though, the memories stayed, unresolved, unsaid and unfinished. The news then stopped her in her tracks. It didn't look good for Michael Landon. He had a rare, severe form of cancer. If most people knew Karen's story, they would think that she would feel vindicated and maybe even glad to see the man who had hurt her fall from grace. But Karen had a very different feeling. Michael would always be a big part of her life, no matter what had happened between them. This made her sad. They had worked together on set for almost 10 years. A lot of people still loved what they made, even though they cried in scenes and laughed between takes. He was now going to die. Karen didn't know what to do. She wanted to keep quiet in some ways, just like she always had. But another part of her knew this was her last chance. This part had quietly lamented the loss of a bond that never quite happened. She sent him a letter. It was a letter of peace, not a rude message or an attack. In her autobiography, Karen writes about the event with amazing detail. She sat at her kitchen table by herself with a pen in her hand, not sure what she was going to say. It was hard to find the words. You shared a lot of your life with a man who made you feel bad once. How do you talk to him? But she found the words in the end. He was cast because he believed in her, and she thanked him for giving her the chance to reach millions of people. The only thing she asked in return was silence, and she told him she forgive him. She didn't name all the crimes. She didn't say every insult again. She wrote instead from a place of peace which had taken her decades to reach. Karen had to wait after the letter was sent. I didn't think she would hear back. She didn't even know if Michael would read it. But soon after she heard from someone in his group. Michael cried when he read her letter. A few minutes before he died, it was one of the last messages he got. It was enough for Karen. What went on wasn't erased. Even though it didn't change the past, it gave her peace, which she never thought she'd have. She kept that moment inside for many years. Never told anyone else about it. Before writing her memoir, she had never used it to boost her image or cause trouble. She did it slowly and carefully, because she knew that the fans' favorite Michael Landon was still alive in their minds. She didn't want to hurt that. She only meant to add a truth as an aside. Her truth: even the most loved stars have flaws, and even the strongest women have scars. Sometimes all it takes is a letter written in quiet to heal a lifetime of pain. After the book came out though, something that shocked even Karen, because people didn't just feel sorry for them. It caused shock, anger and a long overdue reckoning with the legacy of one of the most untouchable people on TV. And that response would quickly bring in more people. Some former cast members had been quiet for years, just like she had. Karen Grassle's autobiography hit the shelves with the force of a quiet thunderclap. A story that had been kept from the public for over 40 years was slowly told. There were no shocking headlines or scandal-filled press trips. The shockwaves came right away though. Many fans of Little House on the Prairie had looked up to Michael Landon as a child. They felt betrayed not by Karen, but by the thought that their childhood hero might have produced an environment of fear and disrespect behind the scenes. People had seen him play the great dad role, week after week, never asking what was really going on behind the picture. Suddenly there were a lot of questions because Karen wasn't the only one who hadn't said anything. In the months after the book came out, some former cast and crew members started to talk, some in public and some in private conversations. Even though not all of them had the same experience as Karen, a trend started to show. There were stories about a set that wasn't as good-looking as it seemed. Some said they had always sensed the tension between Michael and Karen but didn't dare get in the way. Others remembered how Landon got very angry quickly when things didn't go his way, and how he often used humor as a tool. It wasn't unusual for him to make rude jokes or put down in public anyone who challenged him, especially women. Even Melissa Gilbert, who plays the show's popular Laura Ingalls, had hinted at Michael's complicated personality in the past. Everyone says she still loves him, but she has never denied that Landon could use her feelings against her, especially when his power was called into question. Karen Grassle was the first person to write about it. call it by its name, and make it public for everyone to see. And because of that she got both praise and abuse. Some people said she was trying to ruin the memory of a dead man. Some people said she was angry, jealous, or just trying to get attention. But people who knew about the time she worked in, the 1970s in Hollywood, knew she was lying. Because Karen didn't just talk about Michael Landon in her story. It was about a whole system that let charismatic guys run things without any checks or balances. In this system, women who spoke out were fired, but men who crossed the line were praised. A system where actors had to keep a straight face, take insults, and act like it was all part of their job. Karen Grassle had been through it all. She never told him he was bad. In fact, she made sure to say that he was a man of many inconsistencies. One minute they are funny and kind, and the next they are mean and angry. She praised him for what he did. She liked his skills, his good looks, and sometimes even his kindness. But she didn't hide what else she said. Not any longer. Being honest made it possible for others to come in. Not just in Hollywood, but in all kinds of fields and with all ages. Women who hadn't talked about their problems in years began to do so. I was moved by someone who spoke from the heart, after she had nothing left to show. Her autobiography was more than just a story in many ways. It led to a conversation. We'll talk about what we value in our heroes and what we're finally ready to face. And for those who still thought Michael Landon was the unbeatable star of the golden age of TV, Karen's news raised one last question. Who was the father we loved on TV if not the man he said he was? What other truths have we ignored? Most of Karen Grassle's friends and classmates were long past retirement by the time she was in her 80s. The time of Little House on the Prairie was over. It was no longer Michael Landon. It had been a while since the fans and the press had worked together, but Karen hadn't been able to rest. People had said for decades that she was the most beautiful, elegant, and steady person on the show, but not many people had thought to ask how much it cost her to play that part. In real life, not just on TV. Since her book came out, the interviews have been coming in slowly. Karen didn't try to get attention though. She spoke with the same quiet grandeur that made Caroline Less so loved when she did. She didn't yell her story. She said it slowly, carefully, with grace and control. She changed the way her memory would be remembered. She wasn't just the actor who played man anymore. It was because of her that a generation of women who had been afraid to speak out against power finally found the courage to do so. It's funny because Karen Grassle never wanted to be in the news for bad things. She turned down chances to tell the truth for years. Even though she knew the whole story, she let Michael Landon's reputation grow. She stuck to the plan when people asked her about him in interviews. He was great. He had skills. We laughed at him. Each of those things was true in its own way. It wasn't the whole truth, though. That's what finally made her speak up. Not to take away or shame her, but to finish the picture and add her voice to a story that had always been told from someone else's point of view. Forgive her, she didn't want it. She wanted the truth. She gave her fans more than just memories in the process. She told them the truth. Michael Landon is still a complicated figure in the history of TV. Brilliant, attractive, driven, and weak. Very wrong. He can still remember Karen Grassle. She made it longer. People had to hold on to both facts at the same time because of her. He had beautiful ideas, but he could also be mean. She didn't stop there either. Karen used the attention her memoir got to get behind causes that were important to her, like helping women in the entertainment business with their mental health and fighting for fair treatment on sets. As an actress, she didn't play a victim. She played a survivor. She was a woman who had been through something painful and come out better for it. Her story is not meant to teach you a lesson. It's a call to responsibility and a warning that keeping quiet may help you stay alive, but telling the truth sets you free. She didn't say anything for decades. She smiled when everyone else did. She went to the show and never let anyone see her break. But behind that famously calm face was a woman who was carrying the weight of being ignored, slighted, and shamed. At age 82, she is no longer upholding the lie. She is telling the truth again. And fans who used to blindly love Michael Landon are now seeing the whole story, because sometimes the sounds that were the quietest were the ones that spoke the loudest. The next story will stick with you even more if the first one did. Look at it now.